On April 17, 2005, the state chapter in New Jersey celebrated its 5th class to be honored by the National Wrestling Hall of Fame with a Lifetime Service to Wrestling Award presented to Coach John M. Allen. Coach Allen began his lifetime commitment to wrestling some 50 years ago at St. Benedict's Prep School. Coach Allen coached 30 individual champions and 7 national prep champions, the foremost being Mike Caruso, who recorded an 81 wins to 0 loss high school record before earning 3 NCAA championships at Lehigh University. John is an exceptional individual. He has devoted his life in working with young people through athletics, teaching the skills and attitudes fundamental for success in sports, but more importantly, teaching his wrestlers how to win with humility and lose with grace and dignity. Coach Allen has always enjoyed the reputation of being a gentleman coach who brought credit to his profession, teams, schools, community, and family. And now, here is Coach Allen, who will instruct us on skills.
We'll work against duck unders next. First, you want to know the positions and setups from which and by which duck under might be executed. If ever you purchase a wrist and the opponent is known to be a good duck under man, tend not to hold his wrist tightly. Hold it loosely so that he can always let go of it if he starts a duck under, and that'll nullify his duck under action. If you do care to hold the wrist tightly, bring his hand up to your sternum area. You can always from there bring it back down to where you could do your own duck, or you could do drag or power trip or whatever it is you care to set up off the wrist purchase. Tend not to ever use inside-out wrist grip. By doing so, you make yourself all the more vulnerable to a good duck under. That's the ideal grip for an opponent to have if ever we're looking for a duck under. He's very vulnerable. In general, against duck under, keep your hands high and close to your own body. And keep your elbows close to your own ribs. If ever, even in a short reach out to lock up with opponent, if ever you reach out, keep your elbow or elbows in front of your own ribs, within your own shoulder width, not out and up to the side. Now we're going to reach out and up, and we're going to allow our partner here to start a duck under. If he starts into, let's say, an elbow pop type duck under, as he goes into that, and if he does not pivot out right away, or pivots too slowly, or pivots insufficiently, what we might be able to do is get an underhook as we turn to face him and use turn action to put him on his back. So when a man's doing a duck under, his responsibility is to do a quick pivot once he gets his penetration accomplished, and if he fails to, you might be able to execute turn action against the duck under. Also, at times possible, when a man goes in on, let's say, an elbow pop duck under, you can do wing near side roll action to step over. You clamp onto the upper arm, you go down to your shoulder, and then step across, get to the other side, and trap him on his back. Now, another reaction against duck under is what we call PB pan. It's kind of difficult to do up on the feet, both men on the feet. The opportunities don't arise that frequently up on the feet to do this. But down on the mat, we're going to place one man in the beginning of a duck under. He's already got a duck under started. And the man that's being ducked under, as a last resort, is going to do PB pan action. He grabs the tricep, he grabs the far lat, and then he just whips pancake style his partner or opponent down to the mat. After you arrest the man's motion, not before, don't allow him to roll through, you can step one leg across and look for double break, pin break, a devastating pin break. So up on the feet, you want to keep hands close, hands up, elbows in close to ribs. If the man starts into a duck under, there are a few things possible, but very few things. If he's any good at a duck under, it'll all happen so quickly you won't have time to defend. Down on the mat, PB-PAN becomes a possibility in certain situations. All right, being caught by a headlock is always a great concern, so we're going to work against the standard headlock right now. There are various types of headlock, but we're talking standard headlock. If you're in neutral and you're concerned the other man might do a headlock on you, you might be able to dip your head and do duck under action and slip behind it. See, when you're out there wrestling in neutral, you want your head up, but not way up where it's a target. And of course, you want to keep your center of gravity relatively low in case you still get your head, despite your attempt to dip it. So one more time, dip it ahead, duck under action to slip behind can at times be workable against an attempted headlock. Item number 2 against headlock. You might arc to evade the hip throw. As he gets going into that headlock, you could circle, circle, circle to take away his leverage for the throw. If you go the wrong direction on your arc, you're putting him in a position where he can hit you with good hip action and throw you. So when you arc, you must arc away from him. Resist the temptation to go the wrong direction and place yourself where opponent can really launch you into a full-fledged hip throw. The next item against the headlock is if a man goes for a headlock and if you're behind him as the process evolves and able to resist the throw, squat, squeeze, pop your hips forward and up, arch your back, dump him to the rear. That is, get him before he gets you. So if you get in behind him as he starts into the headlock and you're able to resist the throw, squat, squeeze, pop the hips forward and up, arch your back, dump him to the rear. Next, there are times when going with the force via hard roll-through action is proper. If unable to prevent being tripped or tossed toward your back, go with the impetus that has been provided. But go past the point of opponent's desire and rise enough to ensure that opponent cannot possibly step back over. Always recover your base fully after a roll-through action. One more time on the roll-through. He hits you with the action, go with it, rise to base so he can't come back up and get control of you. Now, roll-throughs are much more likely to be effective against novices than against pros. That is, if the headlock throw or dump is done correctly, there is only low probability that a roll-through will succeed. Because if it's done correctly, you're going to come over perpendicular to your opponent's body axis and you won't be able to roll through. If he trips you down, then roll-through is very likely to succeed. Now, if you're caught in a headlock down in the mat, the man has brought you down and you've been thrown or dumped by a headlock and you've been placed in jeopardy on your hip or back, the primary technique for recovery is to immediately, without panic, start corkscrewing your own body within opponent's grasp, hip hoist your bottom leg away somewhat, and get altitude. That is, rise to your knees. Make sure while you're corkscrewing inward and rising upward to move your own knees away from opponent so that your balance is fully reestablished. That is, he cannot bump you down to your hip or back again. Once up, use your head, that is neck strength, to dump opponent and gain control. One more time. If you're down, caught in a headlock, you're on your back. Now what you'll want to do here is corkscrew the base. So you want to hip hoist away. You want to slide your bottom leg away from opponent, rise to base, and then use your neck strength to dump him with your head to gain full control of him. So that's the primary item when caught in a headlock. Recover base. You've lost base, recover it by moving away from you. Now there are moments where you can do roll-throughs down on the mat. You weren't able to do it as he brought you to the mat, but sometimes you can do it down on the mat. If you can grapevine your opponent's leg, if you can entwine your leg with his, you might be able to roll through. You bring him across your body and then come up on your knees and get base and get control of him. Or if not able to grapevine, sometimes your arm that is around his body trunk can get a one-on-one so-called wrist bar grip. And with that grip, you can utilize that and a little hug of his body with your other arm to roll him through. And again, always rise to base as soon as you roll the man through. Altitude means leverage. So you always want to get more leverage, more altitude than your opponent. When truly desperate, you're caught on your back, nothing seems to be working, weren't able to corkscrew, can't drape, can't roll through in general. That's when, in a desperate attempt to get off your back, to unload the opponent, you go into a high bridge. Get up on the top of your head and rotate outward rather than inward. One more time. If you're capable of a high bridge and or you're desperate, you can seek to unload an imbalanced opponent via hard upward thrust of your hips and gut so as to somewhat facilitate outward rotation to your knees, pivoting on the top of your head. And that'll get you off your back and put you in position of control. More easily said than done, but yet possible for some people. All right, we'll mention one other type of headlock that we'd like to work against at this moment, and that's reverse headlock. What we had been working against was a standard headlock, and there are various types of headlocks, at least in our estimate. Reverse headlock is worth going against because it's so commonly applied by opponents. We perhaps and probably have it elsewhere mentioned on film, the little series that we do. But the number one item in this series against a front headlock down on the mat is a slip drag. We reach across, get the upper arm with our free hand, we get an inside thigh grip, and we cheat out to the side, get a little angle, and then we slip our head out, do a little drag action, get behind the near arm. If, as we're doing slip drag, attempting it at least, our opponent scrambles and faces us, then what we'll do is change our two grips. We'll release with both hands, and we'll go to a cheap barrel roll grip. We don't have much of a grip. We just got the upper arm, but it's not an arm that's really bound tightly to us, so we don't have a great grip on the arm. And with our other hand, we'll do a knee block. We'll reach in across and block the opponent's knee, and we'll do barrel roll action. And, of course, then finish up the barrel roll as we normally would. And a third item, if we're in the front headlock and we're a lightweight in particular, it's harder for upper weights to do this because of the bulk and the weight involved. But what we can do is start into a slip drag type action, get in position to do slip drag, but instead of putting our hand on the inside thigh, so long as we have a good secure grip with our other hand, the drag grip hand, we'll reach up across the opponent's back and grab his lat, and then use neck strength to pancake it, and put him over in a position where we can get full control and get points, maybe more. All right, there are people who are expert with heel catch. Cael Sanderson, the great wrestler, is a terrific heel catch expert. Now, in general, you tend not to brace your feet when you're tied up and trying to back away from your opponent. By doing so, you make yourself vulnerable to heel catches. You don't want to walk on your heels. You walk on the balls of your feet, not your heels. You don't want to keep your legs stiff and straight. You make yourself vulnerable to heel catches. You don't want to stagger around. That's when you're tired. You make yourself vulnerable to heel catches. Don't allow opponent to tug and shift you around, whereby a foot will get close to him and maybe have too much weight on it, and he'll be able to go down and get a heel catch. So don't brace with your feet, don't walk on your heels, don't keep your legs stiff and straight, don't stagger, that is stagger around. Don't allow tugging and shifting, and have opponents shift weight onto a foot and then pick the heel or catch the heel. And you can also, if you anticipate heel catch, get an outside collar grip and be ready to do shrug. You can almost invite the heel catch, do shrug action, and slip in behind him as he goes to get you. Or if not shrug, shuck. That is, if you have elbow grip, like crotch grip, he goes down for a heel, you can shuck his arm by pretty much doing the same thing with your upper body as you did on the shrug. You can also, if you have an underhook and your opponent is foolish enough to go down for a heel catch, you can do turn action. Throw him right on his back. He shouldn't be going for a heel catch when he has an overhook and you have an underhook. But if he does, take advantage. And then lastly here against heel catch, we're going to do a limp arm simulation if we have an overhook and opponent goes down to get a heel catch. What we do is sort of a limp arm action. We just let our arm go limp and come in behind his near arm to get control points. One more time. It's only done when the opponent has an underhook and is going for a far heel. We do limp arm action, slip in behind him, and get control. High crotch, as done by most people, is simply a modified duck under. So the things that we would do against duck under, we would tend to do against a high crotch in general. We want to keep our hands high and close to our own body. We want to keep our elbows in close to our own ribs. But if an opponent does get a hold of a high crotch grip on our arm, and we're concerned about high crotch coming, we can block off the high crotch with the thumb. You get thumb in front of his bicep, and it makes it a lot more difficult for the opponent to execute high crotch. Now, if he has an underhook rather than an elbow grip, if he has an underhook, anytime we bring our hand out to the side, our overhook hand out to the side, we make ourselves vulnerable to high crotch. Knowing that, we've got to be ready to do an inside-out sweep with our free hand. As he goes in, we block off the high crotch action that he'd like to execute. And we would work from there to do whatever is necessary or wise to get better leverage in our situation. And also, if we are in a underhook, what we might do in concern against the high crotch is put our free wrist where the opponent can grab it. When he does grab it, we reach across and get his upper arm, drag grip, roll our hand free against the thumb, and now we have him. He had us with underhook a moment ago. Now we've got double drag grip, and we can either do the double drag or a heel catch from that grip or whatever else we deem proper amidst the choices that are in the double drag series. It is a must that people learn how to defend themselves against a leg lift, usually done off a single head in by an opponent who has penetrated to get into that single head in position. If the man shoots in on a single head in, and he's going to do a tripod type leg lift where he posts his two hands and then brings both knees off the mat and starts to rise, what you might be able to do is reach over his back, over his head and back, and get a heel catch type grip. Do a little bump action. You might not imbalance him entirely. He may just lose his balance slightly, but hopefully you'll be in a position to at least free your leg. If not gain full control of him, you'll be at least able to stretch your leg back free. One more time. If the opponent is in on a single head in, and he posts his two hands and brings his knees off the mat to try to come up into a leg lift position, before he gets that leg up in the air really, you reach over his back, get heel catch grip, do a little bumping action on him, try to imbalance him, and then maybe stretch your leg free so he can't get you. Second item, if he is in on a leg, single head in style, and he steps up with the wrong foot, doesn't do tripod action, but it's going to step up. He steps up with the foot that's in front of you. Then you can reach over and get his knee, and grabbing that knee hop, you'll be able to dump him toward his hip. You'll spin around, dump him down toward his hip, and then you'll be able to gain greater control of him once he loses his balance. Again, he's in on a single head in, he steps up on the wrong leg, reach over, grab the knee, dump him to his hip, and then wrestle from there. A third item, he does that exact same thing. He steps up on the wrong foot when he's in on a single head in, you grab the knee, you hold it until you can circle around toward that leg and lock on an RC. His face will be near his knee, he'll be vulnerable to RC. One more time. If you can reach over and grab the knee, the leg that he stepped up improperly on, you can circle toward that leg and lock on a reverse cradle grip, which is a devastating pin grip. A fourth item, this time again, he's going to do the tripod action. He's in on a single head in. He posts his two hands, his knees come off the mat. As he's working his way up, trying to get into position to get the leg lift, you can do spladle. Sometimes you'll catch him in a position where he's bent forward enough that you can lift him straight up over your body, perpendicular to your body axis. You get your heel behind his knee, you get your other hand behind his other knee, you grab on both sides with heel and hand, you fold to your free leg, and then you lift him straight up over your body, perpendicular to your body axis, and you get him in a pin grip called the spladle. One more time. He's in on a single head in, and particularly if he does tripod action to get up to a leg lift grip, what you'll do is crowd him, get your heel behind one knee, get your hand behind the other knee, fold to your free knee, lift him straight up over so his rear end goes high in the air where he's defenseless while that's happening, and wind up in what is called spladle pin grip, which is an entrapment that is not easy to get out of or to avoid a pin from. All right, if ever our opponent succeeds in getting a leg lift, if he gets that leg in the air, we prefer to have the leg in behind one of his knees, either between his legs behind a knee or between our body and his body behind a knee, so that he can't lift our leg very high in the air. We only allow it to be lifted but so high. Now, the most basic thing that we can do against the leg lift is keep a whizzer in, get wrist control, and look for the optimal moment where we think he's relaxed enough that we can stretch or kick our leg back and free. One more time. Basic as it is, it's that important to know. We keep a whizzer in, get some wrist control, and look for the optimal moment to stretch or kick our leg free and get back to neutral with our leg under our control. Now, if he has the leg in the air and he's got a good grip on it, and our leg is between his legs or even between his body and our body, what we'll do is hop around to a facing position, and we're going to do a lateral lift over. We can do a hand cut back here or a lateral lift over. We're going to do lateral lift over. We're going to squat. We're going to reach across and get the far knee, and with our whizzer grip, elevator action with our leg, lifting action with the hand that's behind that far knee, we're going to bring them across our body laterally. And then we go up into two upper arms as our pin grip. One more time. If we get up against an opponent who gets our leg in the air, we get our whizzer in and we get into a facing position or a near facing position with our opponent. That is, we're both facing pretty much the same way, actually, rather than facing toward one another. Then we'll squat, reach across and get the knee in our hand before we start our lateral lift over. We'll fold to our knee, lift with our leg in our hand and our whizzer grip, and then finish up with a standard two upper arms tie. It's a very highly probable move if you're well practiced at the execution of it. It's highly probable you'll succeed at it. Now, also hopping around to the side and facing the same direction as he, this time with our leg between his legs, we're going to do what's called a hand cutback. That's what we call it, at least. We're going to reach behind his near leg with our hand. Our instep is behind his far knee. We keep our whizzer grip. Our instep and our hand are going to push forward. Our whizzer grip is going to pull backward. We duck the opponent to his rear, and we lock our hands together. The whizzer arm and the arm around the leg lock, and we call it a headless whizzer. So one more time from a different angle. The opponent has our leg in the air, and it's between his legs. We hop around so that he and we are both facing the same direction. We reach in behind his near knee, get a good grip on it. Our instep is behind the far knee. We press forward with our hand in our instep. We pull backward with our whizzer. We lock our fingers together or grab our own wrist, whichever, and we get what we call a headless cradle. It's a very tough grip to move out of. Also among our leg, all right, hand cut back we put to use now, whereas previous to recent years we used an old cutback. There are two old cutbacks, one more dangerous than the other. This is the less dangerous of the two. We're going to get into a position where the opponent and ourselves are facing the same direction. Our hands on collar. We're going to keep an instep behind the far knee, post the hand, and then come in behind both his legs and trip him backward over our leg. And now we get a standard side cradle. That movement is illegal these days in scholastic style, but not in freestyle. And it's illegal because it has injured so many. The other old cutback is even more dangerous. We will not demonstrate it at this time. All right, a few other counters to leg lift. The opponent has our leg in the air, and it's between his legs. We pop his head to the outside. We hop around, get drag grip, get hamstring grip, and put him down on his face with drag action. Come in behind him. One more time. He's got our leg in the air. We pop his head to the outside, come around so he can't get arms across body, and do drag action to bring him to the mat and gain control. Still another method. He's got our leg in the air. We get a front headlock. We pop his head to the outside. We get a front headlock. We squat. We get the knee, and we do a parallel lift over. We lift him straight up over the top and go right up into a reverse cradle. Or, staying down right there, we can step across and get double grip. We have the chin, so he can't rotate one way or the other. And we have a double grip, which makes it tough for him to rotate one way or the other. Once again, he's got the leg in the air. We pop his head. We get a front headlock. We squat. We get the knee. Good grip on the knee. Sit. Elevate. And either put an RC on or a double grip. With the double grip, we keep the chin grip. Twist his head. Twist his chin down towards the main. Single leg drop head in attack move is sprawl. So we're going to do some repeated sprawls here. We're going to try to attach some words to these sprawls. A sprawl involves jumping one foot back or both feet backward, not upward, sagging your hips low, generally tilting one hip toward the mat slightly, and facing opponent's rump. You may have to pivot as well as sprawl to keep him in front. So if the man, unless using underhook style defense, we never sprawl to the knees. Keep the knees off the mat. Try to put your gut in the way of his penetration and be heavy on opponent. Prevent full or further penetration. Upon sprawling, tend to push opponent's head away and down since he needs his head up and close. Or gain wrist control. Keep your own arm or arms from being controlled. Definitely do not insert an underhook or dangle an arm and thereby make self vulnerable to barrel. So that non-overhook arm, that free arm, you don't want to put it where you can get barrel. Put your hand on his head or grab a wrist. Also on sprawls, you want your back arched, your head up and your gut low. You don't want your butt up in the air. And you want to relax your body to be more effective against lifts so that an embarrassing, if not injuring, slam cannot occur. There's something to be said for anticipating an attack move and sprawling far enough back to minimize opponent's grip, if any, on either or both legs. You can't afford to let him get a position whereby he may just cling. It might not be in the spirit of the sport that he do so, but the history books will never reflect that sad item in the listing of his win if he gets deep enough to cling and stop you from doing what you care to do. Now, if opponent does offside single, where he tries to spin around to the rear, first what we want to do is not let him get there to the rear. We would turn to face his butt, sprawl that target leg back. So if he taps a forearm, gets a wrist purchase and taps a forearm, and tries to do a single head out to the other leg, single head into the other leg, where he'd like to spin to the rear, we try to keep him in front by facing him and not letting him get to the rear. If he gets to the rear, some things that we might want to do. If the opponent achieves his goal of getting to the rear, we seek to perform limp leg action. That is, slip the leg toward the front and out of his grasp. If he tries to cling to the foot, yet loses his hold, he'll likely fall forward a bit and be vulnerable to a spin behind. So as the foot comes free, immediately turn and swoop down to perform spin, placing near hand and rudder pose behind near arm. If opponent succeeds in clinging to the foot, if he does succeed in clinging, despite your attempt to do a limp leg, you change direction and perform a vertical high leg over. Step free leg back, around, and to the other side of opponent, and then squat down, thrust fist up through rear crotch, and apply a Pauline's liftover, that is somersaulting. Follow up immediately with application of reverse Nelson to trap him. We'll do that one more time. So, number one, when he does a tap and tries to go to the rear, we try not to let him get to the rear. If he gets to the rear, we would keep it simple and try to just do limp leg and then hopefully get a spin behind if he clings to that leg. If, on the other hand, he clings so well to that leg, the limp leg action doesn't work, then we would do the vertical high leg over, make a fist, reach down into the rear crotch, do a Pauline's lift over, that is somersault him, and immediately trap him in a reverse Nelson as he continues to cling to that leg, which humans have a tendency to do. They cling to whatever they have a hold of. All right, let's say that now that we have done a good sprawl, the opponent has shot in for a single head in, we've sprawled back, and we've gotten ourselves in good position to work what we call quarter Nelson series. On the quarter, you're going to put the hand on the head, free hand on the head. Your overhook arm, the hand of that arm, is going to grab your own wrist, and you push the man's head down and to the inside, and then circle his head a little bit, arc around his head, and sink a reverse Nelson and get inside crotch grip. One more time from a different angle. Man is in an attempted single leg drop, head in. We've sprawled well. We put the free hand, not the overhook hand, but the free hand on his head. The overhook hand grabs our own wrist. We push his head down and inward, and then circle, arc around his head, and sink a reverse Nelson and get inside crotch and trap him on his back. Now, sometimes in your desire to get quarter Nelson, your opponent resists, and you've got to have reactions to his reaction. So if we press down on that head when he's in on a single, and he'd like to force his head upward, we can release the pressure, relax for just a millisecond, and then do a pancake and dump him to the side. Never back toward his feet, where his feet would resist the pancake action. One more time. We press down on the head. He resists it greatly. We sense that. We release the stimulus. We let his head come up a little bit, and we do a pancake action and dump him to the side where we can trap him on his back. Also, off the quarter Nelson, all the time that you're applying the quarter Nelson, you're watching his far heel. If your opponent steps up on that far heel, you can do what we call a heel catch. All you do is you trap the heel, and then you use a forearm lift to dump him through the opening between his feet. You do not dump him toward one foot or the other, each of which would act as a hindrance to the dump action. You dump him toward the opening between his feet. From a different angle, quarter Nelson to heel catch. You You've got the pressure on the head, but you're watching that far foot. He steps up, you lift with your forearm, pressing against his chest, dump him to the rear, do the ultimate between the feet. If you have a quarter Nelson on, and you're putting the pressure on with the quarter, and the opponent's arm that's up on your leg, the outside arm that's up on your leg, comes down off your leg, that's a signal to you that you can do a two-arm shuck. With your quarter Nelson grip, you shuck his arm forward, get behind it, put your hand in rudder position so that he cannot pivot in, and you get 2 points. One more time. Quarter Nelson is being applied, pressure is being put on. The opponent, for whatever reason, takes his arm down off your leg. That's a signal that you can shuck his body to the front, get behind the near arm, placing your hand in a rudder position behind his upper arm, and get the 2 points. Similar to that, you can put the pressure on with the quarter, and instead of continuing with that pressure, since you sense no good result coming, sometimes you can take the pressure and change it from a downward pressure to a push-away pressure. You push his head away. If you sense his arm come down off your leg, you release your quarter grip and do a little short drag with your front hand and get in behind the arm. So quarter Nelson is potent, particularly for strong people, and yet there are things that you can work off the quarter that are very effective if there's a need to make a change of. An old quarter Nelson, very potent in freestyle, most probably illegal in scholastic style, is what we call power quarter, where you get a grip on the man's chin with your overhook arm. The hand of that arm, you grab your forearm instead of your wrist, and then you crank him over toward his back, and you don't arc the head. You go the opposite direction and then ease him down. There's a lot of pressure on his neck, so you have to be very careful in the application of force that you don't injure. Now, beyond quarter Nelson, some of the other moves after we have sprawl, beyond the quarter Nelson series, we've got what we call weird forearm. It's just an overhook grip where we reach all the way across under his chest and get his forearm on the other side. We pull that arm in toward us, and then we tap his far knee, sort of block it, and then bump him to his hip. And then circle, get into a straddle position. We do not double grip. We keep the knees spread wide for balance. We straighten our arm, the overhook arm that we have gets straightened, and our fingertip grip gets strengthened. And we have one hand out as a post so that the opponent cannot cause a loss in balance. This we call weird forearm. So with the overhook hand, you reach all the way under his chest, get the upper arm, sweep his arm under him, hand block, dump him to his hip and back, straddle him, post the hand for balance, straighten your own overhook arm to tighten the grip, and cling more tightly with your fingers, and you'll find that the man is frozen there. It's a very, very potent movement that has put many a good wrestler, even a good wrestler, on his back. Now, from that same action, but without the weird forearm grip, we're going to do what we call a Hensler. It's another high leg over type action. We've got the overhook on, and what we're going to do is reach across and tap that far knee, that is, block it with our hand. With a wrap around his chest, we're going to bump him to his hip. As he goes over, we do high leg over action with the tied up leg. Get a reverse Nelson and trap him on his back. Again, from a different angle. Opponent is in on a single. We've sprawled. We find that we can get a chest or upper abdomen wrap, and we feel that we, with a hand block of his knee, can take him off his base. We dump him off his base, do a high leg over with the tied leg, immediately sense the opportunity for a reverse Nelson. Insert it, free our legs, get perpendicular, trap him on his back. Still another maneuver when a man is in on a single head in is what we call delayed bypass to a Turk. If your opponent is in on a single leg head in and he happens to step up on that far foot, but his head is so low that you wouldn't be able to dump him backwards between his feet through that opening. He's got too much weight forward and down. Instead of going for the heel, you grab the knee hop. And instead of dumping him to the rear, you post a hand and dump him to his hip. As he goes to his hip, you suck your gut in, pull your gut back, so his head slips past so that you can insert a Turk. Once you get the Turk in, you can complete it any way you want. For example, you can do terrible Turk, where you wrap around the collar, wrap under the knee, and walk your fingers toward one another until you can lock your hands. And that bends them in a grotesque manner to such a degree that it really traps him deeply on his back. One more time. Opponent is in on a single, head in. He happens to step up on his far foot, but his head is down to such a degree you would not be able to lift him backward through the opening. Won't go backward, so you have to accommodate him. You grab the knee hop, post a hand for your own balance, dump him down to his hip, suck your gut in so his head goes by, so that you can insert a Turk with your heel, and then complete the Turk any way you see fit. For example, terrible Turk, where you grab collar, underhook knee, and walk your fingers toward one another on the mat until you can lock your fingers. Action against an opponent is very useful when you are in sprawl position. It has enabled many people to get points. Particularly near the edge of a circle, pride drag is highly recommended before the two of you get out of bounds and no points are scored. Ideally, when an opponent attempts to attack and get points, you not only stop his charge, you also make him pay the price point-wise. On pride drag, we reach inside. Pride drag is very potent. On the pride drag, we want to get our overhook arm, the hand of that arm, on the inside of his thigh. We also want to stretch our leg and press our bicep vertically down toward the mat on his upper arm as much as we can. The bicep of our overhook arm presses down vertically. And as we stretch our leg back and pressure his upper arm with our bicep and press outward with our hand that's in the inside thigh position, his hand can come down off the leg. It may come down off the leg. If it does, with our free hand, we reach underneath and get a little short drag grip and do a short drag and get behind in your arm and get points. One more time. We're in a sprawl. Our overhook hand is on the inside of his thigh. We're pressing outward with that hand. Our bicep is pressing downward toward the mat to pressure his arm down toward the mat to try to get his hand off our leg, which leg is being stretched, also in an attempt to get his hand off our leg. And as his hand comes down off the leg, our free hand reaches in underneath and gets a little drag grip. And we do a little short drag and get behind the near arm to get the point. Now, anytime you are dragging from the knees in an attempt to go behind, your hope is that the opponent either has a narrow base, which would make him vulnerable to being tipped to one hip, or he tilts his hip toward the mat, which makes him vulnerable to being tipped toward that hip. So anytime we're attempting a short drag, we do it under control with the hope that we can change off to a pancake. So we pressure. If we sense the man tilting his hip to the mat, his right hip toward the mat, then what we would do is release the pressure that we had and change to an overhook and pancake. One more time. Pride drag, pancake. Start the pride drag, you apply the pressure, but you sense that the man either has a narrow base or his hip is tilted in such a manner that you could effectively execute the pancake, we'll take the pancake. The pancake puts him on his back. The pride drag gives us only 2 points go behind. Another move against single head in is a log roll spin behind. If the opponent is in deep on a single, this is an effective move. If an opponent is in deep on a single, this is potent for some people who find an ability to execute this type movement. What you can do is what we call a log roll type spin behind. You lean weight into him, take your overhook arm, bring it across his body, and continue to rotate your body log roll fashion until you find yourself behind him, where you can put your hand behind his near arm. One more time from a different angle. He's in on a single, head in. You've sprawled. You've got your overhook arm there, but now you take your overhook arm out of its normal position, reach across his back, and start into log roll action, putting a lot of pressure on his shoulder, making it very difficult for him to retain his grip on your leg. And you got to go behind. Now also, of course, wizard. The overhook arm is there just in case of the need for whizzer and drill action, and we're going to pretend at this point that there is that need. The opponent is not only in on a single, but he has circled around to the side a little bit. He's got a little leverage from the side. So what we do is we grab our own leg or stomach, one of those two spots generally, and we throw our hip into the opponent as we put pressure into his lat area and shoulder area. And if he loses his balance, if we find him imbalanced, we take advantage. We take the whizzer hand out, posted for balance, do a high leg over with our free leg, as opposed to the Hensler high leg over, which was with the tied up leg. And we grab under the near knee, wrap around the collar with the other arm, and we make a cradle out of the situation. We put him in a cradle. This is what we call leg over cradle. One more time from a different angle. If you have a whizzer on, and the opponent has come around to the side, and you sense a need to put yourself back in front, so you drill, but he loses his balance. Anytime a man loses his balance, he puts himself in jeopardy. In this case, we'll take our overhook hand out, place it across on the other side of his body for balance, do a high leg over action, and immediately apply a cradle, which we call leg over cradle because our leg is draped across his lower body there. And if the man retains his balance as we drill, then what we're going to do is sit through to the front, and as we rotate up to face him, we lean into him, and we take our free hand and put it either on his head, at the crook of his arm, or we grab the wrist. We never insert it or dangle it where a man could get our upper arm and hit us with barrel action and put us back on the bottom. From a different angle, drill action. Man's in on a single head in, and we grab our own leg or stomach. We give him some torque action up into the lat and shoulder area. We look away. We throw a hip in as we do that. And then we sit through to the front, leaning into his head, and turn up and face him. And we're in a position where we can work some of those other moves that we've just demonstrated and lectured upon with regards to overhook. Now, anytime you drill and move to the front, if the opponent raises up, the first thing you'd want to look for is a pancake. It can happen, and we'll demonstrate that a little later. As one last additional overhook series movement, we're going to sprawl, and we're going to get the opponent's tricep in our hand. We have the overhook on one side, and our free hand gets a tricep. And if we sense that the opponent could be dumped to his far hip, what we'll do is pull in on that arm and do an arcing move and do a hip whip. We whip our hip into him, and then you make a fist in his chest area. Continue to grip the far arm that you had, the tricep, and pull up on it, and you trap on his back. One more time. You've sprawled. You've got an overhook on the one side. You've got his tricep on the other. His head is caught underneath. We call it overhook freeze position. And what you do is arc and whip your hip into him as you pull in on that arm. Make a fist, put it up on his chest. The other hand that had his arm pulls up on that arm and trap on his back. Now we're going to do repeated pancakes, and as these pancakes are being repeated, we will mention some of the major points, or many of the major points that relate to pancake. First of all, standard pan with bicep under face is preferred over head-out pan and headlock pan because experience has shown that opportunities are more abundant and results are generally much better. That is, the pan succeeds and the pin grip avails on a more frequent basis. Opponent may be open or raised up of his own accord, otherwise he must be set up somehow. Some folks are just susceptible, while others have to be baited. What you want to do is seek a slightly facing, a low hover pose with chin up over opponent's neck. Do not try to pan from a parallel position. You would be where his body must land, and gathering sufficient leverage to dump him will be difficult. So you want to be in a near-facing position. On a sprawl, you want to drop soon enough to get back far enough that pan can be a possibility, ideally. Ideally, a chest-to-chest relationship is required. From high hover pose, only headlock pan may be possible. If he straightens up enough from his underneath position, where enough force can be mustered to raise his head up. Do not waste energy and attempt pan if opponent is too low and or alert to its coming. Try something else, and if that does not work, check to see if the situation then calls for a pan. An ill-timed pan attempt is unwise in that it makes him wary as well as waste time and energy. Stay disciplined and just wait for the right moment. Fortune may yet smile. Make no pancake effort versus an opponent who is rising to his feet. The attempt is almost certainly doomed to failure and could result in your own loss of balance. Prior to execution, hang the whizzer arm relatively loose so as to conceal intent and somewhat relax opponent. When the moment to execute comes, to facilitate the pan, make a fist and raise forearm up to put a tight vise on opponent's upper arm. Keep your own legs back, away from opponent's potential grasp while executing the pan. Beware of aggressive movement that could cause loss of your own balance and give him, the opponent, control. As pan begins, that free arm gets inserted under opponent's far armpit while making sure to bring the bicep of that auxiliary arm under opponent's face by keeping elbow in front of your own body from the outset. With the overhook arm doing most of the work, you let your hips sag on a downward angle into opponent, try to get chest to chest, and dump him around to the side, pivoting on a knee. Ease up on the dump force as he is about to land. Do not provide enough impetus for a roll through, but then tightly secure pan pin grip. Do not attempt to dump him back toward his feet where there would be resistance and whereby he might be injured. So it's all dump action to the side. Now there are a variety of setups, some of which we've already demonstrated, so we'll only do partial pancakes here to illustrate. If you have sprawl, an opponent has come around to a parallel, almost the rear position on you, and you're forced into applying drill action, pan may avail itself as you sit through to the front if opponent happens to raise up. If he raises up, you could dump him to the side. If you have forearm grip, the tricep grip, when you're in sprawl position, pan will avail itself if opponent rolls his hand up over your forearm to free his arm. The moment he does that, he's vulnerable to pancake. If you have his far wrist in your hand, and he would free it by rolling against your thumb. The moment he does that, he's vulnerable to pancake. If he has your wrist, when you're in that sprawl position, he has your wrist, you can reach under with your overhook arm, get his forearm, free your wrist, rolling against the thumb. Pull his forearm underneath his face, body, and he'll want to free it by bringing it back out to the side. When he does that, you release the grip on the forearm and change to a pancake. You can also, of course, do it off quarter Nelson pressure. If you apply quarter Nelson and he resists by raising his head up, you can release the pressure and change to a pancake. You can also do it off pry drag action. If you have pry drag grip, or at least the hand on the inside of the thigh, and you sense him tilting a hip, you can forget about the drag and change to a pancake. You can do it off weird forearm grip. If you have weird forearm and he would free his arm by pulling it out to the side, you can release and change to a pancake. It can be done, a pancake can be done via shrug. If you have, if as you shrug, the opponent, when you start to go behind him, pivots the fascia and gets an arm up to stop your go behind, he could make himself vulnerable to a pancake. You can also do it via a snap down. If you have collar and tricep and you're snapping the guy down and you're going to go into a spin behind and you start behind, if he pivots the face and gets an arm up, he makes himself vulnerable to pancake. So pancake has many and varied setups. Now some combinations. If you're in the midst of a pancake and you're really dumping hard but he doesn't go, his balance is good, you may have to switch off to an arm throw by. So what you do is with your elbow, you flick his arm to the front, you hold on to that forearm and get far ankle, and that ensures that the referee will give you a 2-point go behind. So arm throw by is a possibility. Drag can be a possibility on occasion if you are pancaking an opponent. If he, for purpose probably of retaining balance, brings his arm down from around your body, when that arm comes down, you can change from pancake action to drag action, get a little go behind. Of course, forearm and hip whip, which dump them opposite of pan, is a combination with pancake, and lateral drop is itself an exotic pan. We will demonstrate how you can get to lateral drop via a pancake attempt. If you're attempting to pan the man, but he posts his 2 feet and leans forward into you to rise to his feet, as you get up with him, he'll be leaning forward still, and you can hit lateral drop, which is nothing more than a standing, very exotic pancake. Now we've already put on film in the sound portion of it the various points that are important to executing a pancake well, standard pancake well. We've talked about some of the combinations that go with standard pancake. Now we're going to talk about some of the variations of pancake. We have a tendency at moments to teach by group with regards to moves. For example, pancake has several variations. We teach those variations as a group of moves. And headlock has many variations, and we teach headlock as a group of moves. So, variations of pancake. First, the standard pan itself, bicep under face, and now head out pan. If ever opponent is in an attempt to get a leg drop, and we have sprawled, and we would like to do our standard pan, but somehow we don't get our bicep under his face, that eludes us, and we do a head-out pan, which is not preferred. When we dump him over, we don't immediately step across into a double grape position. So as we dump him, even though we might sense it'd be the thing to do to step across and double grape him, we don't do something like that because he's liable to go with us, and we'll go right on over and under again. So what we would do normally is we would take our second arm, our overhook arm, and place it underneath his arm at the elbow area, just above, and then sit through and walk our fingers toward one another. It creates excruciating pain to the opponent, So you have to be very careful in the application of the grip. So if you happen to execute a head-out pan, do not immediately step over with a leg to try to secure a double grate and thereby provide opponent with the necessary momentum to rotate through. If you fail to bring your bicep under his face on a pancake, at least be smart enough to sit through and jack his arms up in a tortuous manner, or slide back alongside him and get set for a delayed double grate application. So one more time, we're going to dump him. His head has slipped out, or bicep was not under the face. Instead of stepping across into double grate, we would sit through, get our second arm under, so we had both arms under his arms, and walk our fingers toward one another as to torture him a little bit and get some near fall points. Pretty tough to pin. Now stay right there. If we are in a position where we could slide back slowly and step up into a double grate position, then we might do that, because double grate, even a delayed double grate, any double grate, has very great potency for pinning an opponent. You gotta start again right there. Right? Now, head-out pan is not the best, because when you dump them, it is possible that he could drive back into you, knock you off your base, rotate, put you on your back with a deep Nelson. And that's the worst feature of head-out pan. There's a good chance he might recover from the pan, and if he does, you could be in bad trouble. Whereas standard pan, where your bicep is under his face, is actually more potent as a pin lead-up and far less risky. Therefore, we tend to make sure that the bicep goes under opponent's face on a pan. That's the preferred. Now, our next pancake will be headlock pan. Conceived for headlock pan was conceived for freestyle wrestling, where the hope of a tilt outweighs the concern of missing opponent's head. However, whatever style is involved, if you have not sprawled back far enough nor low enough, headlock pan might wisely be utilized in the event opponent raises up sufficiently or is forced upward from his underneath pose by your picking up with your overhook arm. So where necessary, let's say opponent is in on a double leg drop, he's in that position. Where necessary, you raise him up. If he's already raised up on his own accord, all you have to do is use the lower part of your auxiliary arm, not your overhook arm, to lift and or sweep opponent's head over to such a degree that you can sag and put him in a headlock grip. That's all headlock pan involves. One more time. Opponent is in deep on a double. He's either raised up or you've raised him up. You take your auxiliary arm, the non-overhook arm, and put it across the bridge of his nose, and with a sweeping action, you bring his head across in front of you, let your hips sag, and put him in a headlock, and ultimately put him together for the match. So a headlock pan is a variation of pancake. Still another variation is quick pan. Now, quick pan can be done from a handful of different positions, many of which, if not all of which, are already on film. So all we'll do now to illustrate quick pan is we'll do it against an attempted switch. We've mentioned, I think already, or will before this film is completed, mentioned that it's very potent if an opponent happens to go for repeated switches. When he tries one more switch, you withdraw your arm, you get a back hook grip with your other hand, and then you pancake them, bringing your hand that you withdrew underneath his far armpit. One more time. Opponent has gone for a switch one time too many. You withdraw, you get a back hook, and you pancake underneath that further arm. So quick pan is a variation of pancake. Still another variation would be to put a reverse cradle grip on opponent, and if he sits through away from you, you can use pancake action to lower him to the mat, from where you would hold them until you get near fall points, and then do a flip, and then cover him to get the pin. Still another pancake you from kneeling. If as you're attempting to apply slip drag action, for whatever reason you decide to change off, you might change off to a pancake action. Reach up and grab his far lat, and then you use neck strength to pancake him. You dump him to the side. That's a variation of a pancake. Still another one, if you have front headlock on your opponent, and you crawl backward on your knees and draw him in, you might be able to change direction, go toward him, and bring your knee alongside his knee and do pancake action. So pancake can be applied from reverse headlock. Pancake of a sort is what PB is. If a man is in a duck under position on you, he's gotten into a duck under position, you can get far lat, near tricep, and pancake him. And then eventually, after you arrest his motion, you think about going into double grip. So another